I have 60 of my 70 orders yesterday were single item orders, but then the other 10 were for 38 items, 14 items, 17 items. That has made a huge, huge difference. And I think that is a huge part of why my revenue is 70% up so far in November versus prior years.
It took Tracy 9 months to get her first 25 sales in a month in her Etsy store, and then now a year and a half later, she's been able to grow a consistent side income of selling over $10,000 in revenue every single month, and even in December of 2024, she had her biggest month yet of $53,000 in revenue. But what's crazier is she is set to actually smash that number wide open in 2025. So if you've ever wanted to grow a consistent income on Etsy, then you're going to love this interview with Tracy. Tracy's been able to grow this income all without even having to print and ship any items herself using a process called print on demand. Print on demand is a great business model where you get to make the designs on your phone or your computer, publish them for sale on Etsy, but nothing actually gets printed and shipped until your customer orders it. And then your production partner, like Printify, for example, would print and ship those items directly to your customer for you, meaning that you get to just make the designs, post them, and handle the customer service, which makes this the perfect business to grow if you do have a full-time job like Tracy still does. But she has big dreams and goals of quitting her full-time job in 2026 using the strategies that she's going to talk about in today's video. In today's interview, we'll learn what product that Tracy sold, the biggest mindset shifts that she had to have to start making that consistent income, and some of the biggest mistakes that she made along the way that she had to learn so that you can learn from her mistakes and hopefully start getting those consistent sales even faster than she did. I have vetted and verified Tracy's numbers for this video, but we won't actually be sharing her Etsy shop for privacy reasons. And if you haven't actually started your Etsy shop just yet and you're interested in starting a print-on-demand business and making some side income as well, then comment the word READY down in the comments below and I'll send you a link to my completely free mini course. Even if you've opened an Etsy shop, I do think it would still be super helpful. I'll help you choose which product that you should actually sell, how to price it, and get your first design listed in your Etsy store so that you can get going with your business and just take action right now. So comment the word ready down below if you haven't gotten started just yet, and we'll go ahead and say hello to Tracy. All right, hi Tracy. Thank you so much for joining me. Super excited to learn a little bit more about your story and share what it took for you to start getting consistent sales in your store.
Hey, Cassiy. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to sharing everything that I've learned so far.
Awesome. Well, let's just dive right into it because I know everyone is so anxious to hear how you got to getting more consistent sales in your store and be able to learn from some of the lessons that you had to learn along the way. So, kicking it off, what first inspired you to actually start your Etsy shop and what were your goals when you opened it?
Sure. So I had a family member send me just a short video from one of the social media platforms. And it was somebody who was talking about her experience in, opening her Etsy shop and the freedom that she had in her life now because of having built an Etsy business. And I was watching it and I remember going, oh, I could do that. Knowing absolutely nothing about print on demand and knowing nothing about Etsy other than having made a few purchases here and there. I just saw it and something just kind of clicked in my brain and I was like, oh, this could be an option for me. I could definitely do that. And then initially when I was looking at it, I looked at it. So initially when I looked at it, I was thinking along the lines of, okay, well, this could be a good additional source of income in that I could use it to pay off some debts. I could use it to have more vacations, bigger vacations, that kind of thing. It wasn't until probably a good year or more into it that I realized, I could really build this big enough to replace my corporate job income and just do this full time. So that's where I started, and then that's where I'm headed now.
Very, very exciting. I know when I first started, I wasn't thinking this was going to be my full-time gig either, but I feel like you never really know until things start to kind of click and you start seeing some traction in your business. So in the beginning, when you first started, what kinds of things were you trying or experimenting with to start getting sales?
Sure. So I tried a lot of different things. I was chasing like every trend that I saw on, YouTube or on Instagram that people were talking about. I tried a ton of different products. Initially starting with apparel and did okay with apparel, but wasn't getting a ton of consistent sales there or anything. I jumped around. I had a couple mugs in my shop. I had tote bags in my shop. I had, variety of t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies and just all kinds of different things. Um, so I went through a bunch of different products. And then as far as trying to like bring traffic in, I did some Etsy ads and mostly just kind of deep dive into content that was available free, mostly on YouTube, and use that to build my knowledge as much as I could, piecing it together myself.
And looking back, do you think listing all those different product types and like hopping from thing to thing to thing is what made it hard to kind of stay consistent and find traction in the beginning? Or do you think there was anything else that made it take a little while to start really getting those consistent sales in the beginning? Because you didn't always have consistent sales.
Right. Yes. No, sales were few and far between for many, many months when I started. I think that, yes, the jumping around, I never actually built, like, I didn't build out a niche. I didn't build out a product type. I didn't do any of that stuff until, the very end of my first year of trying to work with my Etsy shop and build things out. So that was a mind shift that I had to make. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be a hyper squirrel anymore and just do everything. I'm going to pick one thing, I'm going to focus on it, and I'm going to do it really well. And then the other thing that had to shift for me was I needed to quit treating my Etsy shop as a hobby or as a side hustle, because by thinking about it like that, I was like, oh, well, I feel like making cookies right now. So I'm going to go do that instead of listing. Or I'm going to go, watch this TV show instead of focusing on my shop and doing things. So when I shifted from thinking about it as this optional thing that I could do to thinking about it as, hey, I want this to work. I want it to be a true business. That's also, and luckily for me, those two kind of converged at once. So I was able to bring those together. I had my focus on a product and niche. I had my mindset shift all at once. And that really worked out well for me.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes just those little moments in your business that kind of open your eyes to the possibility and kind of change course and you get a little bit more focused. So I think, hopefully in this interview, we can help the people watching find some of that focus, maybe even a little faster than you did, just hearing your journey and what you kind of the lessons you had to learn so that they can avoid them as well. So, what advice would you have to someone right now that's feeling really overwhelmed and isn't sure even what to focus on?
Yeah. So I would tell everybody you need to make two decisions to start. Number one, what product are you going to pick? And I'm not saying like apparel where you do t-shirt, sweatshirt, comfort colors, Bella Canvas, like all the different things. I'm saying pick one thing. Maybe that's a comfort colors t-shirt and that is all you're going to focus on. You're not going to worry about spreading your designs into other products right now. Just pick one product. The other thing is pick one niche that's large enough for you to be able to micro niche down. So, that could be teachers, that could be nurses, that could be mama. Pick something big, but you're not going to do those high level designs that just say teach or just say mama. You're going to really focus down and say, okay, I'm going to, bring this design down to a level where it's going to really speak to somebody and you're going to run with that. So you make two decisions. What is my product type and what is my niche? And then stick to those so that you can really become an expert in those two things.
And do you kind of think that people should have just like one niche in their store, or do you think just sticking to that one niche until they kind of find success and then they could do kind of related things? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So my shop, I now have a variety of things, some that are very unrelated. So I don't think you need to stick to a one niche store. Um, but initially, when you're starting, keep it very focused. Once you are, really comfortable with the niche that you're working on, you've built out a couple hundred designs that are feeding into that, then start looking at, okay, what are maybe some related niches, or what are some niches and trends that are happening now that really just speak to you as a person so that you feel inspired to go forward and build for those.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. It can be really hard to learn when you're hopping from thing to thing to thing. There's so much time that goes into learning a new product, how to price it, what mock-ups to use, and even different niches, especially if you're not familiar with that niche, you're not personally related to it. You might not understand some of the more like nuances or jokes or types of graphics and colors and fonts that do well in a niche. I think that does make a lot of sense to really just stick in one place and learn and grow until you start to see some traction. So I couldn't agree more. Definitely something that we talk about in the POD roadmaps. And I think a fun thing to bring up because we talked before the call. Do you feel comfortable telling us how many sales you got today in your Etsy shop?
Yeah. So today I had 70 sales. Well, actually, today is still going. Yesterday I had 70 sales. And yeah, I'm very thrilled with that.
Yeah, no, that is quite a great day and hopefully very motivating to everybody watching because again, Tracy didn't start making consistent sales for months and months and months in her business, but in 2025 has really been able to change all that. And do you feel comfortable sharing the product type that you sell?
The product type that when I picked something to focus on and stuck with it, I selected ornaments. I made that decision in August of the year of 2023, and that has really paid off for me very well. I've had two really great quarter fours, and now I'm rolling into a third quarter four that is looking like it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're already well on your way, which is super exciting. I know I shared in the intro of the video that now in 2025, you've been able to gain a really consistent business, even with ornaments, which I think is very interesting to be able to sell those all year more than you think that you might be able to. I know you sell a couple other product types now as well, now that you've really scaled your shop some. And let's talk about that a little bit more because I'm sure that you probably liked the niche that you picked, but how did you actually figure out which niches or which niche was the one that you were going to really scale and double down on and make more designs for? How did you actually choose that niche?
Sure. So the first niche that I tried, and I will be fully honest, was the like first year married wedding. I did terrible at that. I I cannot wrap my head around wedding stuff, and it just did not work. So my first bunch of designs that were wedding focused or engagement focused were complete flops. They'd get like 5 views and then nothing else. So I tried that one because it was a big niche. So then I shifted to something that I actually enjoy and started getting those consistent sales. My designs had relevancy. My designs were um, things that I liked, but also things that I knew people who also enjoyed this niche would like as well. And then as certain tools came out, like ChatGPT, I was able to start getting into things where I would ask ChatGPT, like, hey, what if someone likes X, what other things does this person also like? And then I was able to bring things in that I would have not thought of on my own in order to cross niche my designs and my items and make them gain even more traction.
No, I think that's a really, really good call because I think a lot of people, when they start listing, they try one listing, one design for a niche, and then they move on to the next one. And I think that's where it can really take you so much longer to learn. Because if you find one niche, and again, like you are talking about, really understand it, really test a lot of things, you can start to gain a lot more insights, understand what people like, and then it's so much easier to make those designs. So, can you talk to us a little bit about what niching down and cross niching has looked like and helped you kind of stand out and add value? Because I know you're not copying what other people are doing, which is something that people really struggle with. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that has looked like, learning how to cross niche and niche down?
Sure. So, um, learning that skill is really, really hard, from the perspective of a beginner, because you sit there and you look at designs in your niche and you go, oh my gosh, everything's been done. I'm looking at, say, teacher, and I'm scrolling through pages and pages of Etsy listings and I'm going, oh, there's that style, there's that style, there's that style. It's all already been done. But then when I started micro niching, so we'll keep going with the teacher example. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to do a teacher design, I would take it down. Okay, what's the next level under that? And that the next obvious level is grade level. So, okay, first grade teacher. And that's niche down. But then I try to look at it and say, okay, how can I take this down one more level? And so now I'm looking at not just first grade teacher, but new first grade teacher. Maybe it's a first grade teacher who is in their first year of teaching or first year at a new school. And I try to make sure that my design is going to target that person or someone buying a gift for that person. Other ways I could then micro niche that first grade teacher down even further are, okay, first grade teacher's aide. There's a lot of first grade classes who have teacher's aides. Kindergarten, first grade, a lot of those elementary school ages have aides in their classrooms, and there's not a lot of or not a lot of things out there for them. Then I might look, okay, I've got a first grade teacher who's about to retire. So, what are some giftable things for them? What are some designs that they might choose for themselves in order to really get into some other designs and things that would really speak to them as someone who's soon to retire, but is still in that last year of teacher mode?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. So, really starting with getting really specific with who your design's for, super helpful. But what about actually making the designs? Is there anything that has helped you kind of learn how to make better designs that add value and are like trending?
Yes. So there's a couple things. The first thing is I joined the POD roadmap when it was first offered as a beta class. So I've been one of the like early members of POD roadmap, but I joined it and I did not engage in it. I watched the classes and lessons, but I didn't take action for at least 6 months, maybe longer. And when I look back today, that was one of my first big mistakes was that I had invested in this wonderful resource. I enjoyed the content when I watched it, but I didn't take action. And so, anyone who's sitting out there on it, take action. Just make sure you do that. So then coming back to the question, within the POD roadmap, we get access to monthly trend reports. And right now in the month of November, we're getting weekly trend reports. And that has been hugely helpful because I do a lot of my research on my own, but there's times where my dog or my family's needs are just too much for me to be able to add that research on top of doing everything else. And those trend reports have literally saved me. I had a really big project at work over the summer, and I had probably about 6 weeks where I was doing 70 and 80-hour work weeks with my regular job and trying to keep Etsy going. And because of the trend reports, I was able to, for a short time, take that research task off my to-do list. And I mean, Cassiy basically spoon fed me, hey, these are some of the new trends. So I was able to keep designing and keep working, albeit at a slower pace than I normally would have, even though things were really, really crazy for me at that moment. So the trend reports are hugely helpful. And then I would say the other thing that I do routinely is I make sure to watch content from a variety of YouTubers who speak to me very routinely. I try to watch maybe not every day, but pretty consistently, several times a week. And when I'm watching them, I'm not coming from the mindset of, oh, hey, what's the next new trend or what's the next product I need to jump into? I'm watching them for just that motivation of like, hey, keep going, keep going. Because yeah, I may not jump into the trend of phone cases, or sell that product, but there's still that motivational piece of it where someone's telling me like, hey, here's things you can be doing. And while I'm not technically doing that exact same thing they talked about, I'm still doing something and moving myself forward.
I think that's really, really great advice because, especially if you have never worked for yourself before, it can be very hard to continuously self motivate. When you first start a print on demand business, it's cool, it's sexy, it's fun. You're like so excited to learn and so excited to try stuff. But to build a really consistent income, that means that you have to do it even when you don't feel like it. You have to do it tired, you have to do it when it's not fun, and you have to keep going even when sales slump and you don't get as many sales maybe 1 month as you wanted because it isn't consistent. It takes a little while to build it that way. So I love that advice. We talked about in 2025, you've been able to consistently sell about 10K in revenue or more every single month. What has that actually looked like in terms of profits?
Yeah, so in terms of profit, I will say I was very bad at calculating what I should be selling my items for, and I really buckled down and fixed that in 2025. So in 2025, my each month I have maintained at least a 20% profit margin, and now towards the end of the year, the last couple months, I have been able to increase that even further.
That's amazing. Yeah. And, we know that's not enough to quit your job just yet, but we know you are headed there and you have some big goals. And I think if you just keep doing what you're doing, that's going to make a really big difference. But some of the things about the print on demand business that are interesting is that it hasn't always been that consistent, but sometimes it's higher. So last year in 2024, your November and December, you had seen huge numbers. And I know you're going to knock those out of the park this year. Can you tell us what you sold in revenue last November, December? Do you have that up still?
I do, yes. So last year in November, my revenue was $46,000. And then in December, I was at $53,000. And that was about two-thirds of my income for the entire year was in November and December last year.
And what did you say you're up percentage of revenue wise compared to last year?
This November compared to last November, same time frame, I am up 70% in revenue.
That's amazing for your third Q4. That is a huge, huge jump. So I think that's super, super exciting. So obviously, you've been able to do some amazing things. But again, kind of breaking that down for people who are new, what does that look like listing consistently for you? So are you trying to, and like what it led up to 2025? So maybe 2024 is my question. How many listings were you doing every day or every week or every month? Like, do you have an idea of like what type of amount of listings you were putting up before you started really hitting your stride with the consistent sales?
Yeah, so I work in batches. So I will spend a day or two where I'm just doing research, and then I'll spend a day or two where I'm just designing, and then I'll spend a day or two where I'm listing. So I don't have a daily number that I hit, but I definitely have a weekly number. And most weeks I'm hitting probably in 2024, I was hitting probably between 20 listings a week on a slow, not able to get as much out type of week to as many as 50 or more. Some weeks where I was really able to find a lot of time and get everything out that I had designed that week. So definitely between 20 to 50. And overall, the majority of the year, I probably averaged right in between that around 35 a week.
And for anyone who's sitting at home feeling like that's impossible, how could I ever do 35 designs even a week? Do you have any advice for anyone feeling that way?
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the things that really helped me, and the trend reports definitely play into this, is well, first off, I was becoming an expert in my niche. I was becoming an expert in my product of ornaments. And then I was using my research and the trend reports to look at what I had already put out and say, okay, well, what is a new trend that's coming out that I'm starting to see or Cassiy called out in one of the trend reports, and how can I bring that into my niches? And some trends just don't fit the niche, and that's totally fine. But other trends, um, you can really build them in. And I do a lot of things with templates. So while each of my micro niches is very different, I can still use the same design style across a lot of them. So I'll have a template where I say, okay, I'm going to target that micro niche we talked about, a first grade teacher aid. And I want to have a set of giftable ornaments. I don't make one first grade teacher aid ornament. I don't make three first grade teacher aid design ornaments. I make 15 to 20 and sometimes more than that. And by doing that, maybe out of those 20, 19 never sell. They never pick up or get traffic, but one of them will. And then I'll start getting consistent sales on that. And then I'll branch that one because now I have a clear sign that this is doing well. And I'll make sure I take that design style into my other niches and micro niches that maybe I hadn't brought it into yet. So I do a lot of, okay, I'm going to make this into a template. I'm going to run through and do my 20 designs focused on this niche. And then I'm going to see what does well and make sure I, retroactively take that back to other niches and fill in any gaps I might have.
I think that's a perfect example of doubling down on what's working. So that can look like, yeah, making a design that does well for one niche and adding that design style to another one, or just when something starts selling really well for you, making even more designs for that niche. But I love that you're doubling down right in the beginning. That's the way that I recommend in all my teachings as well, is don't just make one design for a niche, make 10, 15, 20 is even better. So that way you can really test out breaking into that niche, because even if your design's great, it doesn't mean that it's going to sell. It has to emotionally connect to the buyer. They have to it has to catch their eye compared to the competition around it. And even if you do your best work, it's not always going to resonate with someone else. You never know which one is really going to be the one that people are like, wow, I love that. I have to have that. And so I think that's really, really great advice. And it hasn't always been consistent. 2025 has been your most consistent year, but what helped you actually stay motivated to keep listing even when you went through some of those slower times with your business?
Yeah. So, and that can be really hard, especially with ornaments. You're going to have a much slower time January through October. Like it is going to happen. And other product types will have similar, ups and downs and everything. And other niches will have ups and downs. And so, what I did during that time is that's when I really leaned in on my YouTube motivators. And then I also, kept that goal in front of me of like, okay, where am I going? What is my end goal here? And right now, my end goal is to replace my corporate income. And so when I sit at my desk to design, I have signs on my wall here behind me or in front of me that say, here are my goals, and this is what I'm working to achieve. So I have specific numbers. I'm just looking at them for a moment. I have specific numbers for how many designs a week I need to get out there and get listed. I have specific numbers of what my profit margin needs to be at on average, the or monthly revenue number that I'm targeting. So I got really, really specific with my goals, and I made sure that they are right in front of my face every single day.
I think that's really, really great advice. I think there's a really big reason why people talk about manifestation. They talk about vision boards, is if you can't picture the future and what it's going to look like, then you might accidentally zigzag on your way there because you don't know where you're going. But if you can picture the end goal in mind and exactly what you want it to look like, I think that does make it a lot easier to stay consistent and stay on the chosen path that you have, because there are 100 different ways that you could be successful on Etsy. There's so many options, but you can't do all of them. The best way to start getting consistent income is to get consistent with your actions, working towards a single goal. And I think you've done that really well. And so let's talk a little bit about mindset and strategy to kind of end off some of our interview here. So a lot of sellers struggle with pricing, and you had mentioned kind of not pricing for a profit, and now you're making a lot higher of a profit margin. How did your mindset shift around charging what your products are worth, and how has that kind of changed?
Sure. It is really hard to look at yourself not as the customer. And I was someone or am someone who looks for deals. I'm looking for things that are on sale. I'm like, how good of a deal can I get on this? Um, and so when I started my Etsy business, I was also looking at, okay, well, if this person's charging this amount, if I'm a little bit lower, then I should get all the business, right? And that is absolutely not how Etsy works. People come to Etsy because they want to have quality products that are customized to them specifically or to their gift recipient specifically. And they're not looking for, something that you can pick up at your local big box store that's the same as everybody else. They really want to be able to have their gift send a message, or have their shirt that they're buying for themselves to wear send the message that they want it to send. So I had to really get myself out of that mindset and into the mindset of, okay, this is what's going to appeal to my customer. So at this point, I know that my items are quality. My designs are very well done. I've put a ton of designs out there, and a large number of them have not gone anywhere. They, talk about like the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your income comes from 20% of your work. And it's essentially the same thing with Etsy. I'm going to put out 80% of my designs that no one's ever going to look at. They're never going to take off. And that's okay, because every time I put a new design out, I am building that designing muscle. And so that's really, really important for me as I move forward, to make sure that I know, okay, it's okay that not everything worked. I don't have to be perfect at Etsy, and I will be able to still achieve my goals and get where I want to be. The other thing I had to learn was that I did not do a very good job in the beginning of making sure that my items were very profitable. I still made a profit, so I wasn't losing money, but I was certainly not making a profit that was going to allow me to quit my job. So I spent a lot of time in 2025 making sure that the profit I'm receiving per sale and per item, even when I bring ads into the picture and, all the different expenses that go into it, are still getting me towards my goal.
And is there a certain like percentage profit margin that you're aiming for with your products at all?
So it varies by product. And like I said earlier, overall, I'm aiming to be higher than 20% across the, everything. And that's higher than 20% after I have taken into account all expenses, not just the cost of paying my print provider for the item and shipping. So I typically target in that 40% range. That way I have enough wiggle room if I do need to work on prices in order to get a certain large sale, or, something like that, that I still am being very profitable. But my profit percentage does vary by product. And I do have some niches that I'll aim for a higher profit percentage than in others.
Now, that makes a ton of sense. I think just a good thing to kind of picture if you're watching this at home is, let's say you wanted to make $1,000. Would you rather have to deal with 500 customers that give you $2 profit each, or 100 customers that you make $10 profit each? So it's like you might be able to sell technically more items if you price really low, but someone who is priced a little higher might actually be making more profit. So I think it's an important reminder not to be chasing the vanity metric of how many sales that you have. I think there is a benefit to, when you're first listing your items, to price them a little bit low to try and get those first few sales and get some traction. But you need to make sure that you're pricing to make a profit, or else this is just a really expensive hobby. And that's not what anybody is actually here for. So I think that's really, really good advice there. And what are you actually excited to work on and grow your shop into 2026? Is there any particular things that you really want to do more of or do less of that you think is going to move the needle next year to get you to that goal of quitting your full-time job?
Yeah, so I have a couple things that I'm planning for 2026. Right now, I have a product type that I've just recently introduced into my shop that I'm working on building out. And I know that I'm going to be continuing to build that one out probably for at least the first 3 months of 2026. in order to get it up to the level where I want it to be so that I know that my niches that I'm applying that product to are well built out and well rounded and meeting a lot of the market needs. Another thing that I'm planning that I've already started in 2025, but will be continuing into 2026 is focusing on increasing my average order value. And the way that I'm doing that is by focusing more on things that would be purchased as a group instead of having an order where they buy one item. I'm aiming to have orders where they buy 5 items and 10 items or 50 items, making sure that each of those, I would much rather have an order for 50 items and the profit associated with those 50 items than 50 orders of one item, which is a lot more work and a lot less profit. So I'm really focusing on making sure that I'm building out group listings in all of my niches where they can apply.
And I think you said you've already started working somewhat towards that goal of having group listings. Is that what some of the reason for your 70% increase in sales from last November to this November has been? Is an increase in group orders at all?
Yes, absolutely. And the majority of my orders are still single item orders. And with the products and niches that I targeted early on, I don't see that changing. But when I have 60 of my 70 orders yesterday were single item orders, but then the other 10 were for 38 items, 14 items, 17 items. That has made a huge, huge difference. And I think that is a huge part of why my revenue is 70% up so far in November versus prior years.
So yesterday you sold 70 orders to 70 customers, but sounds like a lot more individual items than that, actually, maybe closer to like 150 or something.
Oh, probably, yeah. I'd have to go add it up, but definitely more than 70 items yesterday.
No, that's amazing. I know that's made a really big difference in my business as well when I started focusing on group listings because you need half the amount of traffic to make double the sales. You really can't beat what group listings can do for your store. So I'm really excited for you to focus on that in 2026. I think that's going to be a huge help for you growing your store. And I really appreciate you sharing your story and your tips and tricks of what's worked for you. I hope this is super motivating to everybody at home that it's possible for you too. Tracy's not a magical unicorn, neither am I. She didn't sell very much at all her first year. You had a pretty good end of the year, 2 months, but it took you months to start making really any money with it and a year and a half almost to start really making a super consistent income. And now the sky's really going to be the limit. So I have one last question for you, Tracy. For someone watching this who dreams of finally getting consistent sales, what's the first thing you'd tell them to do after watching this video?
Sit down and pick what your focus is going to be. What is your product type and what is your niche? And really just focus very, very hard on building that out as much as you can so that you are an expert in both of those things. Don't get distracted, stay focused, and you can absolutely do this. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do this.
I love that. That is great advice. So thank you again so much for your time, Tracy. We can't wait to hear how your Q4 ends up this year. And maybe we'll do a follow-up interview after you quit your job next year, because I have a feeling 2026 might be it for you if you have as big of a November and December and everything as I think you're going to.
Yes, I would love to do that and be able to come back and report that I am now full-time Etsy shop owner, and that is all I'm doing professionally.
Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you again, Tracy, and we will see you next time.
All right. Thanks so much, Cassiy.